Okay, this is part 2 about what I was talking about with the whole conspiracy about Christianity being something that was man-made to keep people in a bubble and to keep them in a religious slumber. It keeps them out of finding a true path or purpose that may not be aligned with, what the powers that be want for these people to be put under, right? So I've read the Bible. I've read the Bible back and forth, here and there, precept upon precept, line upon line, right? Like it says in Isaiah. And I'm not boasting. I'm not saying, I know more than you are, or I know more than the next man. But I've read a substantial amount of information in the Bible. I've researched, I've looked at it. I've even, the book of Joshua mentioned the book of Jasher. And I read the book of Jasher, and I love the book of Jasher. It's just, I find it odd that the book of Jasher is not included in the Bible. However, what I will say about the book of Jasher is this, and I encourage anybody to read it. When it talks about the life of Joseph and what he went through, from the jealousy that he experienced from his brothers and then being put in captivity, and what he went through, and then, the confrontation after, 30 plus years, and he finally confronts his brothers. There is so much in there about about that exchange between Joseph and his brothers. It goes into so much detail. It goes into how Joseph was able to actually find out, how his brothers even came to Egypt. You know what I'm saying? Like, it goes into a lot. And, that portion of Jasher, I love. I love that part of Jasher immensely. I love it. It evokes a lot of emotions. Like when if you're in a mind state to really look at it and have an emotional reaction, it's heartfelt in so many ways. Right? Why am I saying all this? So I'm saying all this because I'm not discredit. I don't want to discredit the Bible. These stories may be true. These stories may not be true. I don't know. I'm on the fence when it comes to a lot of things, right? And I like to be at a standpoint where I can properly observe and assess and research. I like that. I don't want to, go head first into something thinking that, yeah, this is it. You know what I'm saying? Like, because look at, the people of Jonestown, and look how they incorporated that and they made it into a way of life, and how even their leader, manipulated them and forced them to drink the Kool-Aid. You know what I'm saying? So you don't want to necessarily be engulfed in something. Like, you can take it for what it is, and if it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, it's not. But yeah, get back to the main point. So I really need to get back into the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I don't think a lot of people know, but Mark was the oldest of the Gospels, and then it was Matthew, and then I believe it was Luke, and then it was John, because I know that John outlived his kinsman. He passed away in like 100-something AD. You know what I'm saying? So he outlived him. Now, yeah. So in Mark, it stops at a certain point, but then it picks back up. Where it originally stops at, it stops originally at, Christ's, his death, when he was buried. And where it picks up is when it talks about Mary Magdalene and Mary, like they're going to visit the tomb and he's not there and he's resurrected. That's where it picks up at. And a lot of people don't know that. And I'm not saying this to discredit Christ or nothing like that. I believe that he was somebody that existed, and he sparked something. I believe he sparked something that was supposed to have made a pivot and changed the course of philosophy, changed the course of mankind and beliefs, and like he sparked something. Now, I need to go back and I need to look at the Gospels in that essence, the essence that he sparked something. That's what that's what I need to try to really look at it as. Oh my God, I don't know what this person's doing. Just give me 1 second. I gotta get from around this guy, y'all. This cat driving like he driving Miss Daisy, man. Come on, man. What the hell is going on here? All right, anyway, let me get back to what I was saying. But yeah, he sparked something, and I believe that was changed. And I really need to go back and look at it. I really do. So Paul, who used to be called Saul, became an apostle. Now, mind you, before Christ died, before he passed away, he told his disciples, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. They shall say, behold, he is in the desert, or he is in the wilderness, or this, that, and the third." And he told his disciples this. He said there's going to be people that are going to say these things. Now, before I continue on, let's consider Paul. Let's consider him, because they say that Paul became the main catalyst that really, changed the scope of Christianity. It changed it, and he changed it in the sense that people got a better understanding of what it meant to be a Christian, what it meant to be a follower of Christ. And Paul gave us, a lot of, he gave us a lot of things. He gave us a lot of things, that we could, look at and research he gave us a lot of things, right? So, what happened when Paul got converted? Or how did he become converted? So in the book of Acts, one of the first martyrs that was a follower of Christ, his name was Stephen. He got stoned to death. Paul was there. Paul was so adamant and zealous about the persecution of the followers of Christ that he went to the priest and said, "Look, man, I want to catch these people. I don't know what they're saying, but I want to catch them. I don't understand what they're saying. I can't grasp it, because I have been immersed in the laws of the Jews, because I'm a Jew myself from the tribe of Benjamin. Like, I know these things. This is what I debate every day. It's almost similar to Roman philosophy. Socrates. Taking a Socratic approach, asking questions, being inquisitive, and proving a point. In interpreting the laws and things like that. So, Paul was, he was so adamant. He was zealous about that. You know what I'm saying? That was what he was for. And he went to the priest and said, these things that I was all about, these things that I fought for, these things that gave me status in society is, it's at a threat. And it's at a threat because of these people, and I want to catch them. I don't like what they're saying, because they're going against everything I believed and everything that I fight for, even against the Romans. Like, I want to be able to proudly tell a Roman why the Sabbath is holy. I want to be able to tell a Roman, the different interpretations of the law and why it should be respected, and so forth and so on. So Paul went, he requested letters, and these letters are pretty much like bounties, you know what I'm saying? Like, wanted this Jew that follows Christ, So Paul got letters, and Paul was on a mission to find these people. He was on a mission to find them, and he was on a mission to persecute and catch the people of God. That was his mission. Now, Paul got converted. He was on the road to Damascus, however you say it. And he was I guess he was knocked off of his horse or whatever mode of transportation he was using at that time, and he was blinded. He became blind, and he said that he heard a voice, and it said, "Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Don't you know it's hard to kick against the pricks?" And then, Paul didn't know who that voice was. And then Paul said the voice said, "I am Jesus." And, he gave him instructions, you're going to be blind, but you're going to find this guy in this town, go to him, tell him what you heard. Paul did what he was told to do. And he received his sight, and he wasn't blind anymore, and he converted, and I guess he got baptized or whatever, and he received the Holy Spirit. Now that voice, he said it was Christ. Now let me ask you this: if Christ told his apostles that people are going to say, "Behold, he is in the desert," or "He is here," or "He is in a cave," "He's in a secret place, believe it not." That's what he said. He even said, "Behold, he's in the wilderness." He said that too, right? So if Christ is telling his disciples this, and Paul says that he saw Christ, and this is after the death of Christ, and Christ also told his disciples that, as the sun rises from the east and even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. He said, the next time y'all see me, I'm going to be with the clouds of heaven. The next time y'all see me, right? Now, how does the story of Christ match up, or excuse me, how does Paul's testament of Christ match up with what he told the disciples before he died? Now, granted, what he told the disciples was at a clearly a different time, and it was only them. Granted that was the case, right? But even still, in the beginning of Acts, Judas was gone because he committed suicide or whatever, and they appointed someone to be an apostle as well. How did Paul somehow usurp or circumvent his way into that brotherhood? How was he able to do that? He came with this claim that he saw this vision or this or this voice, and there was a light, and he was blind, and he received the Holy Spirit. So, how was he able to usurp his way into that? Now, granted, with this into consideration, with this in consideration, and what Christ told his apostles, in the story of what Paul saw, how would that make sense to a disciple, to Peter? How would that make sense to Peter? How would that make sense to Tom? How would that make sense to John? That, hey man, we're out here, we're doing what Christ said to do. What I'm saying? We're teaching the people, we're starting this revolution. And we remember what he told us before he died. He said that he was going to come back with the clouds of heaven. But this guy comes up and says that Christ talked to him, and Christ, blinded him for 3 days, and he received the Holy Spirit. How is this possible? And even still, Christ said that if I don't go, you cannot receive the Holy Spirit. He gave the apostles the Holy Spirit. Paul was not there. There was an original 12 disciples that received the Holy Spirit, and they were able to do the gifts and the things that Christ did, and they spoke different languages. But this man out of nowhere, that was adamant and against the whole church of Christ, this man that was adamant came up and said, look, man, I received the Holy Spirit too. You know what I'm saying? Give me 1 second. Yeah, so he became part of the team or whatever, right? He said, I received the Holy Spirit too, so I'm a part of this, right? Now, my question is this. Why weren't the apostles, like, why weren't they, you know, inquisitive? Like, why didn't they try this man? You know, why didn't they? I don't know. I just felt like they should have investigated more, because, you know, they should have remembered what Christ said. Like, look, man, you know, people gonna say they saw me in the wilderness somewhere. What did Paul say? Paul said that he spoke to Christ in the wilderness on the road to Damascus. That's what he said, right? Now, Paul was a Pharisee. A Pharisee they're like this elite. They're like the aristocrats of the Jewish community. They are experts in the law. You know, they like to, you know, they like to orally pass down the traditions of the law, and they like to interpret and tell people what the law says. So Paul came from that. He was a Pharisee. So also, you know, the fact that Paul he wrote a lot of letters. He wrote a lot of letters, and his letters are the majority of the New Testament, which pretty much shapes what Christianity is supposed to be. And he says a lot of things, I believe, that are contradicting, like, you know, follow the law, but we're not under the law. Well, do things of the law, but we're not under the law type stuff. You know, there's a lot of things he talks about in there, right? Now, this is all going back to that Christianity thing being created. You know, what if the Pharisees appointed Paul to be this infiltrator? Appointed him to be the infiltrator in you know, because the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees, they were experts, and they knew the questions to ask Christ. Even Christ said, you know, because like he had to marvel at their cunningness, and he called them out on that. Like he's like, yo, man, y'all slick. You know, you are truly the children of the devil. Like, y'all very slick. So what I'm saying is this, is that, you know, when it comes to someone who is an expert of something, especially if they're, you know, if they're against this thing, you know, I would imagine that they are a formidable opponent. You know, there's been friends who become enemies, and they know, you know, details about each other's lives and their beliefs. You know, like look at Julius Caesar, now how he was betrayed by his own countrymen type stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, what if the Pharisees, being a formidable opponent against the revolution of what Christ started, what if they appointed an infiltrator, a mole, right? Somebody that they appointed and gave them this whole thing of, you know, I mean, because if you think about it, they did it with Judas, right? They did it with Judas, and Judas portrayed himself as someone who would be the one that would roll with Christ. But at the end of the day, and even Christ knew it, the disciples, they didn't necessarily understand it. You know what I'm saying? They didn't know that Judas was going to do it. And even when Christ said that you need to do, go do it now, they thought that he was sending them out to go get some more food or something. You know what I'm saying? So they didn't know. But Christ knew what Judas was going to do, and I don't even, well, I mean, even Judas knew that Christ knew, and Judas still did it. And Judas was associated with the scribes and Pharisees. He was the informant, you know what I'm saying? So what if they did the same thing with Paul? You know what I'm saying? So I believe the Pharisees and the I'm just going to say the Sanhedrin, because the Sanhedrin is you know, that's that whole high priestly council of aristocrats, and, you know, the passed down traditions of the Jews, like the Sanhedrin. So from now on, I'll just say the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin, they had informants, they had people like Judas. So why would they not have somebody like Paul? So the Sanhedrin, they were trying to take Christ out because they wanted to maintain and get that control back. But in the grand scheme of things, they still weren't able to stop it because you had the apostles and the disciples, and even by that time, all the amount of things that Christ did, it was so influential, it was so impactful that they couldn't even murder their own people. Like it wasn't like they couldn't be like, man, we got to take all these people out because too many people believe on him, and they don't necessarily believe in us. We got to take them all out. They couldn't do that because even then, what did I say earlier? The Jews, the priests, the Sanhedrin, they only benefited off of their people because only their people and potentially some other people only they believed in their laws. So if they persecuted the entire church and the followers, they wouldn't have any money coming in. So then they decided, okay, here's how we're going to play this game. We're going to get another informant, but this time he's not going to be the one that's going to go against them to physically take them out. He's going to be one that's going to infiltrate and portray himself as one, especially since their leader, the one that knew spirits, the one that knew demons, the one that's not here, the one that's not here, we're going to put an informant in there. They won't be able to discern what type of spirit he is. But that informant that we're going to use, he's not going to go against them. He's going to be with them. He's going to, make it seem as if he has the Holy Spirit. You know what I'm saying? And he's going to do all these things and be persecuted just like them. But he is going to change the narrative. And that's how we're going to create Christianity. Is through him. So think about that. I'll leave you with that.